ECSL scheme. This is because we know we need to protect women and girls. We've got a landmark mission to protect violence against women and girls. All of the data and the releases will be published in the usual course. The Lord Chancellor has made clear of that, but we know we need to do more.
We now come and welcome the new Shadow Secretary, Robert Jenrick.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, can I belatedly congratulate the front bench on their appointments? I've been a little busy over the summer. But during that time, the only group whose popularity this Labour government's popularity has increased with is criminals. How many domestic abusers and sex offenders who were released under their early release scheme have gone on to reoffend? And would they like to apologise to the victims?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I was going to congratulate the Right Honourable Gentleman in his new role, but he seems to have a very short memory, and I believe it is he who should be apologising to the country as a whole on behalf of his government's woeful, absolute misabuse of our justice system and our prisons. Under the previous government's ECSL scheme, there was 0 exemptions that could protect the public. This government put in serious exemptions to prevent sex offenders from being released onto our streets, preventing those from serious violent crimes being released onto our streets, and I believe the Right Honourable Gentleman should maybe have a bit of humility.
Robert Jenrick.
Well, there were exemptions in the previous government scheme, but the key thing is we need to get on and build more prisons. Prison works, and we need to see more prisons being built. The last Conservative government built more prison places than any prior Labour government in living memory, but we clearly need to go further. What funding has the Lord Chancellor secured to build prisons over and above those that were secured by the previous government? And does she agree with her other junior minister that fewer people should be sent to prison?
Again, Mr. Speaker, I think the Right Honourable Gentleman forgets who was in power for the last 14 years and who failed to build any prison places. Just 500 extra prison places were built under his government's watch. This government has achieved a record £1.2 billion in prison building amount of allocation from the budget, and we will be going further. We are the party of law and order. I think the Right Honourable Gentleman needs to look at his previous record.
Abtisam Mohammed.
Question 3, Mr. Speaker.
Legal aid is a vital part of the justice system. It underpins our plans to build a justice system that works for victims, supports access to justice and upholds the rule of law. We are looking carefully at the evidence gathered as part of the review of civil legal aid, which covered issues such as demand, fee levels and the geographic provision of services.
Abtisam Mohammed.
Mr. Speaker, cuts to legal aid and the narrowing of the scope by the Conservatives has meant that many people are no longer able to resolve their problems through access to early legal advice. This has resulted in legal representation being available for only those who can afford it. Will the Secretary of State, will the Minister consider looking into restoring legal aid to pre-LASPO 2012 levels for all areas of civil law to ensure that justice is made available to all people who can afford it? And will she commit to reviewing the bureaucracy of the Legal Aid Agency, which doesn't support the needs and capacity of small firms?
I know my honourable friend has significant experience of working in the legal aid sector, and she is right to highlight the importance of good quality legal advice to resolving a whole range of social welfare problems. We are looking at how we can improve access to early legal advice and support, but she will also appreciate the very challenging financial outlook that we are grappling with. I will raise the administrative issues in relation to the Legal Aid Agency with the Chief Executive there.
Jim Shannon.
Mr. Speaker, can I thank the Minister very much for that response. Minister, when coming to my office every week, I have people who are victims, people who have no access to money, people who deserve justice, and the only way they can get justice is by legal aid. So can I ask the Minister this? What discussions has she had with the P&J, Policing and Justice Minister in Northern Ireland to ensure that legal aid, if available here, can also be available in Northern Ireland? Thank you so much.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for his question. I have yet to have those conversations with my counterparts in Northern Ireland, but I hope to do so in the coming months.
John Slinger.
Question 4, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
By immediately reducing prison overcrowding, we've made prisons safer to work in. We have also accepted the 5% pay award recommended for prison officers in full.
John Slinger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I thank my honourable friend for his answer.
I've been made aware of the consequences of 14 years of neglect of our prisons and probation service by the party opposite. Of the overcrowding at critical levels due to the lack of investment, of staff at all levels feeling exhausted, scared, demotivated, disenfranchised and undervalued, of officers facing unacceptably high levels of violence, drug abuse and bullying between prisoners. So what is my honourable friend's department doing to rectify the consequences of this litany of neglect by the so-called party of law and order, to give our prison officers the support they deserve?
Well, my honourable friend tells it how it is.
Yeah.
The Conservative Party left our prisons and probation service in a mess.
Yep.
Our job, on behalf of the British people, is to clear this mess up, and that's what we're doing.
Sir Gavin Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The prisons in my constituency of HMP Featherstone, HMP Oakwood and HMYOI Brinsford are brilliantly supported by amazing staff. But one of the pressures that is placed on them is the number of foreign national offenders in those prisons. What steps is the Minister taking to make sure those foreign national offenders are returned back to where they came from?
We are already on track to remove more foreign national offenders than the party opposite ever did.
Big picture.
Question number 5, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I have listened carefully to concerns raised about the single justice procedure. As a first step, I have asked the Courts and Tribunal Service to redesign the SJP notice and make it clearer. I will also be calling in SJP prosecutors to discuss ways in which we could ensure the public interest is considered by them in advance of making prosecutions.
Big picture.
Mr. Speaker, earlier this year a decision by the Chief Magistrate overturned the use of SJP for rail fines, potentially nullifying and requiring the refunding of as many as 74,000 fines. It's been reported in the past few days that LNER has been bringing similar prosecutions under SJP without supplying any evidence at all. I don't make any assumption about the guilt or innocence of anyone involved in these prosecutions, but justice must be open, it must be clear and it must be fair. It is unfair to expect people to engage with a process without it being clear what evidence has been laid against them. Can the Minister confirm that her department will keep these principles at the heart of all of our justice practices, including SJPs?
I will raise the evidential questions referred to by my honourable friend with representatives of the train operating companies when they and other SJP prosecutors join me in discussions in the next few weeks. I am clear that the single justice procedure is vital for the efficient running of the Magistrates' Court. However, it must operate fairly and effectively. Let me say this: I will not tolerate poor practice, and I won't hesitate to fundamentally reform this system if that is what is required.
Paul Davies.
Question number 6, Mr. Speaker.
The Young Futures programme will be a prevention-first approach to crime reduction, building on the department's successful turnaround programme. I was very pleased to visit the first secure school, which will put education at its heart, ensuring children in custody turn their lives round.
Paul Davies.
Over the past decade, the quality and quantity of education in young offenders' institutions has declined, as reported by Sir Martin Oliver, His Majesty's Chief Inspector of Education, Children's Services and Skills, and Charlie Taylor, His Majesty's Chief Inspector of Prisons. These institutions are facing difficulties in managing challenging behaviours, leading to an increase in children being put into isolation. Children in these institutions deserve a high-quality education that helps them turn their lives around. The current system is failing them badly. Can the Minister outline what actions the Government can take to ensure that young offenders receive a high-quality education?
No, sorry. Can I just say we are in danger of not getting anybody else in? These are becoming statements rather than questions. Okay, I'm sure the Minister's grasped it.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know there is more to be done, as my honourable friend outlines. Keep apart lists make it difficult for children to access education in youth offender institutions, so we need to find different and better ways of reducing violence and delivering education in these settings.
Jamie Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. During the 12 years that I was a member of the Scottish Parliament, one of the most instructive and rewarding parts of my role were my occasional visits with other MSPs to HM Prison Porterfield in Inverness. I wonder if the Minister would agree with me that encouraging MPs to do the same would do a very great deal, not just for young offenders, but for offenders of all ages.
I commend the honourable member for his actions, and he's right. Visits to local prisons is a good thing to do, or prisons elsewhere. I've recently visited Humber, Wakefield, Newhall, and we'll be visiting Wetherby tomorrow.
Chair of the Select Committee, Andy Slaughter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Is the Minister worried about increasing criminalisation of young people? I noticed the MOJ published last week statistics say that 1 in 4 people of working age in the UK had criminal convictions. Shouldn't they be looking at the current disclosure framework so people with criminal records for minor offences from years ago are not prevented from finding work and moving on and contributing to society?
The honourable member, the chair of the Select Committee, identifies a subject which might well be useful for his committee to examine.
Mr. Mann.
Speaker, a young person I know was involved in an incident at 16. Can the Minister assure me that because of delays that going through the youth justice system that has meant that that young person has not had the case adjudicated, that that person will not be adjudged as an adult if they've passed their 18th birthday when a conclusion is reached?
The honourable member draws attention to an issue. If she would like to write to me about that particular incident, I will write back to her.
Will Stone.
Number 7, Mr. Speaker.
The Register of Judgments, Orders and Fines plays an important role in helping lenders assess creditworthiness and enhancing financial transparency. These objectives seek to support vulnerable debtors by encouraging and enabling responsible borrowing. A consultation on including claimant data on the register recently closed. Responses to it were very positive, and I hope to announce a way forward imminently.
Will Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I am pleased to hear that the Minister is moving forward with the next steps following the consultation. I would further like to congratulate the Minister for moving swiftly on this matter, especially as the consultation has been stalled since January. I hope that with care, attention to data protection for vulnerable claimants, claimants will soon be able to be included in the Register for Judgments, Orders and Fines. Could the Minister also consider other updates to the Register, such as recording partial settlements and shifting the burden of proof on debt satisfaction? This would really help my constituents in Swindon. Thank you.
The honourable member raises some interesting points, and I'm always very keen to help people in Swindon, as he is.
Thank you.
Our focus is on responding to the consultation on including claimant data on the register, which would improve financial inclusion by helping people to resolve judgment debts. Once our response has been published and any reforms regarding claimant data are implemented, we will consider any wider reforms.
Victoria Collins.
Question number 8, Mr. Speaker. With permission, Mr. Speaker, I will answer questions 8 and 15 together. We are committed to supporting victims and survivors of these abhorrent crimes, including through the £26 million Rape and Sexual Abuse Support Fund and through funding independent domestic and sexual violence advocates. Further, we will increase the powers of the Victims Commissioner to improve accountability when victims' needs are not met.
Victoria Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many in Harpenden and Berkhamsted, including our local Sir Optimist International Group, will be taking part in the UN 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence, which includes digital violence. What steps are being taken to rehabilitate individuals radicalised online into criminal behaviours once they're in the prison system, and whether digital citizenship education will play a part in their rehabilitation?
I thank the Honourable Lady for her question. It's a really, really important one, and I would encourage everybody in this House to get involved with the 16 Days of Activism. This year the theme is It Starts With Me, and I think there is a lesson that all of us need to take on board. The Prison Service, to answer her question, assesses the impact of online influences and the need for rehabilitation for convicted terrorists in the first year post-sentencing. But digital citizenship education forms just one part of this rehabilitation. Once we get our prison population under a suitable control following the previous government, we will be able to do more of this important work, and offenders convicted of violence against women and girls are also eligible for accredited programmes depending on their assessed risk and need.
Christine Jardine.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. The Scottish Government recently decided against including misogyny as part of its Hate Crime Act. But we know how pernicious and widespread misogyny is. Particularly in domestic abuse, where just 6% of all